Alright, we should be live. Welcome everybody to another week of game industry and game design topics here on the Game Wisdom channel. I am Josh Bicer, and joining me as always is my co-host, indie developer Sharky. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Hopefully even better here in a week.
It has been one hell of a week, I guess, all around the world. We've got the world burning outside, and of course I got the contract signed for my next two books. So again, everything has to happen all at once.
Didn't the world understand that? Didn't the fire understand that it's got a social distance? It can't be burning outside.
Yeah. 6 feet apart for all that fire.
Exactly.
But it's only going to be a very, quote-unquote interesting time like this next week. I'm going to be sending a word out to all the libraries I've contacted to see if they're interested in doing virtual presentations. So that means collecting at least 700 different emails off of my mega spreadsheet.
So you got your mega spreadsheet to go with the mega podcast today.
Oh, yes. And we certainly got a very big topic. So big it had to be split into 3 miniature topics, as we're going to be discussing player motivation in 3 very complicated and challenging ways. And I think maybe this week we should skip the game news, because that would maybe turn into a 4th topic.
Yeah.
So, let's get right into it. As I said, this week is player motivation. There's a lot to unpack with that, and the 3 that we're going to focus on are just kind of some of the major ones. I'm sure we can come up with more subtopics as we go on. So, the 3 topics we have are keeping the player invested, how to not waste their time, and when does a game go too long? So, Shark, what do you want to start with?
It's a good question. Well, I would definitely say do wasting time before keeping them playing. And I don't know, overstretching a game and wasting time are very, both should be. We should say keeping it playing until the 3rd one. That should be the last one. Either overstretching or wasting time for the first one, and then the other for the second.
Okay. Let's go with overstretching then. I think that should be interesting to discuss.
Yeah, and if Potion is watching, this definitely, is something you should hear right here.
So, when it comes to overstretching a game, this is something I think we're seeing more consumers, even developers, be mindful of as of this past decade. We've spoken, I know I've spoken at length about just how many games are being released daily. In fact, last night from Epic Games Store, I bought like 3 more games. Oh, I forgot, I also bought Far Cry 5 while it was on sale for $5. Just throw that on top of my pile of games to play. And Far Cry is actually a really good segue into this topic, because the open world design has really epitomized this kind of padding and stretching out the game for as long as you can on very basic game systems. And when you're trying to keep somebody invested, one thing you have to watch out for is that length is not always a measurement of quality. Again, when we were talking about 20, 30 years ago, a 60 to 80 hour long game was amazing, because what else are you going to be playing then? Probably nothing. Yeah. Today, a 60 80 hour long game cuts out the other 70 to 80 games being released that week. And it's getting harder and harder to find the time to dedicate to one game, especially if it's one game that is kind of, what's the expression, self-contained, like a single-player game, like The Witcher, Skyrim, etc.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's the games that just go on forever. Like Oxygen Not Included, that kind of thing.
Yep.
Slay the Spire, Binding of Isaac.
Hmm.
7 Days to Die.
Yeah. And
So
those
not.
games are designed around, they're not exactly designed around a fixed length. It's more about how long do you really want to play, or how long will it take you to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the problems that we see with the games that are being overstretched is that the game itself just doesn't seem to grow enough or change enough in any reasonable way to keep the player invested.
Yeah,
And
I mean, the main issue with overstretching is that you don't have enough content to give the player over that time. And keep on, like if you just make it really grindy kind of thing, you're overstretching the game.
yeah,
If you're making it, if there's so many games that we've played. Specifically, I watched you played several of them. In the last, I don't know, 3 months or so.
mm-hmm.
That would have been a really good game if they had ended, and then they just keep on going,
Mm-hmm.
and then it just got to it was one of those little games that would have I forget which one it was, but it was one of the almost kind of mobile like interface where you pick which level you go to, and it was really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you went through like 2 worlds or something, and you were really liking it. And then the third world, it was like, oh, there's nothing new. Fourth
Mm-hmm.
world, oh, there's nothing new. I don't think there has to be something new, but if you've exhausted the old things, then there does have to be something new.
Mm-hmm.
And that game exhausted all it had on those first 2 worlds, so you absolutely needed something new to continue on into the next worlds kind of thing. A lot of something new because they had exhausted everything, and a little bit of something new isn't going to cut
Mm-hmm.
it kind of thing.
Yeah. And some people will say that the story can be a motivating factor, and yes, that is certainly true if the
Mm-hmm.
story is still being a part of it. If it's just, hey, we gotta go collect 27 MacGuffins now before the plot moves forward, that's not really doing anything.
Yeah, that's not even the story moving along. That's here's a whole bunch of random quests. Have fun, and eventually when you get done with them, the story will continue. That's a carrot on a string, but that string is placed about 27 MacGuffins away from you. Which is a long, long distance.
Yeah.
It better be a damn amazing story to get you to
You
keep
don't
on going like that.
you don't want a filler arc in your video game.
Exactly.
And to Shark's point about I don't even remember the game that you're referring to because I played so many of them. But this is one of those things a lot of developers tend to fail on, that the game's length needs to match the mechanics and systems at play. If you can create 30 completely original stages in your game based on your mechanics, and that's it, then your game should be 30 levels long. If you can only come up with 5 ways to test the player, then your game can be 5 sections long. And it's better, I think, today. I actually want to get your thoughts on this, Shark, as well as anyone watching this live recorded. Is it better to have a shorter game that ends, the second that there's nothing more to it, versus a longer game that's trying to stretch things out?
Well, maybe somewhere in between would be the best point. I mean, like, just because you got nothing new doesn't mean that there's not more life to it.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't want to go way past that life. You want to, when you end the game, you want to end it on a good note, kind of thing. Because the last thought of the game is the most important one. You don't want players to quit and be like, oh, that was a horrible moment. That last thing was horrible. and then they have negative opinions about your game after that point. So you definitely want to end on a good note. You don't want to overstretch it. I would say closer to the, ending before, when you have nothing new. But, I mean, you technically have nothing new the second after you introduce the last new thing, which that last new thing can have, some life to it. Because, like, if you introduce a thing and right after you introduce it, you just cut off the game. It's like, But you want to end it before the game gets boring. You don't want to, and also you want to have enough things sprinkled through to keep it going. But that does not mean that it has to be new things. Like I said, story can help bridge that gap. In like a tactical RPG, the fact that, the maps are different. The maps have different tactical layouts. Every one behaves differently, kind of thing. The AI behaves differently based on how you move, kind of thing. That's variance right there. That means every time it is different unless you do the exact same thing. And even if you do the exact same thing, it still might be different. Because the AI might weigh it differently, kind of thing. And, there's many ways to, sprinkle in something that is different in there without necessarily making a new system or anything. But if there isn't anything new, like if it's just, I'm going to jump on these 3 enemies, and then I'm going to jump on these next 3 enemies, and then here's 1 enemy. That's not really variance. That is just less enemies, and even at that, like just 3 enemies right together usually isn't all that good of an idea unless there's a specific reason why they're all together.
And it reminds me of a point Patrick Holloman wrote when he did his breakdown of Super Mario World in his book. And he talked about what Nintendo did really well. That Nintendo doesn't just, by chance, like just raise or willy-nilly raise the difficulty or complexity curve of a Mario game. Instead, what they did with Super Mario World was simply remix elements to create new situations without having to redesign the game. So he mentioned in the book, I think there was only like a handful of moments in the game where you could legitimately say the difficulty curve went up in Mario World, or introduce a brand new mechanic. It was just basically figuring out how many different ways can we use an element in our game, whether it's the PAL blocks or the P switches, the ropes that are on the conveyor belt, etc., etc. So you don't necessarily need to create a brand new system. Like, we're not saying, if you're making a third-person shooter, you should also think about adding a racing segment, and a stealth section, and a art appreciation section that the player must do. But it's about coming up with new ways or new twists on these mechanics. Maybe, like, one of the easiest examples, or one of the more straightforward ones from the action genre, is coming up with enemies who are designed to explicitly counter a potential strategy. Such as, if you can just throw every enemy, maybe introduce an enemy who is unthrowable, or an enemy who has unblockable attacks. You're not changing what the player is doing, but you're affecting kind of how they go about doing it.
Yeah, you're basically throwing a wrench into the gears, kind of thing. Like you're not adding in more gears into the systems. You're not adding new systems in. What you're doing is affecting how the systems affect the player. Whether it's strategy, whether it's fighting methods, whether it's movement abilities, like not the abilities itself, like you could have wall runs, kind of thing, and wall run's great, but once a player's done a wall run, they've done a wall run. But what if, like, say you doing a wall run, but then there's this block in front of you, and now you can't go any farther, but you could jump and then wall run up the parallel wall.
Mm-hmm.
And then you could end up running to a block there and jump over to the other side and then run up that. Like, that is variance on the wall running mechanic. Like, you're not adding more mechanics. That's more of a level design kind of thing.
Yeah.
But level design is definitely part of, this whole conversation, because if you have good level design, that could potentially give you variance.
Definitely. And what you just said there about kind of throwing a wrench into the gears, this is one of the common game design strategies that we see developers make use of. That we introduce a mechanic or a system, and then we introduce the counter or something that will explicitly stop that mechanic and force you to get around this. We see this a lot in kind of puzzle-based games or action puzzle-based titles, where the common solution is use all your abilities to get through this. And then the designer will set up the same puzzle or a similar one, say, okay, solve this puzzle, but now you can't do X. And not being able to do that one thing, again, presents a whole new dynamic to how you have to get around it.
Yeah. I know that Tim does this a lot in his games because he's trying to keep his games really low scope.
Mm-hmm.
And what he does is when he makes a mechanic for his games, he tries to exploit that mechanic in like
every which
thousands
way.
of ways. If it's poison, it can also be bleed. It can also, do this. It can also do this. It can be debuffs, like there's many different ways to take that mechanic and just kind of like almost turn it into multiple mechanics, but they're still just one mechanic kind of thing.
Yeah. When I interviewed him, when we did our chat about his last game, with Philophobia, which I know I just butchered that description there, or the name, we talked about how he had an idea for many other mechanics in that game, but he couldn't figure out how to do more with them. It was just basically, okay, here's a thing, it stops you one time and that's it. And he couldn't think of anything else to do with it, so he felt, if I can't do that, I'm just going to throw it out. Because he, as you said, he wanted to get as much bang for his buck as possible. And spending weeks or months on a single mechanic that maybe only has like 5 minutes of potential in your game doesn't make all that much sense.
Yeah. I mean, it can make sense because, but generally it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
You want as much things to have multiple uses as possible, mm-hmm. because that's game dev efficiency. That's mm-hmm. how you lessen the workload and up the quality of the game.
Mm-hmm.
But it could be worth it because even if it only affects 5 minutes of the game, if that 5 minutes is some of the best 5 minutes mm-hmm. in the game, if it's something that is so amazing that it's definitely trailer material, it could cause your game to sell because you put that part on your trailer kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it could be worth it, but more than likely it's not. So you need to be mm-hmm. careful about that kind of
It's
thing.
Got to be so unique and so groundbreaking that it just basically kind of anchors your game in terms of how original it is. Like something like Undertale's shmup or dodge-based combat system. Like if you can come up with something so original that it just blows everybody away, then yes, maybe it could be worth it. But if it's just another variation on a theme in your game, like if you want to create, let's say, I know, a platform that reverses gravity, and the only thing you can come up with that would make sense is a 2-minute level, or even just a 2-minute section, and it could take you months to implement how you do all that, it may not be worth in the end to spend all that time just to get that one little interesting twist in your game.
Yeah. But I don't think the mechanic necessarily has to be original or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it does need to be impactful.
Yeah.
That's what it needs to be. It needs to be impactful. A little anti-gravity section, probably not going to be impactful.
Mm-hmm.
Not unless you have one of the few games that it is, and then in which case, then it is. You know, that's really the way you have to weigh it. Is it going to be impactful?
Yep.
You know, and you know, there's only so much of that you can, you know, think about in your head, but you can always ask, you know, after you, if you're out on it in your head, you can always ask your testers, just what would you think about if I put this mechanic in there? What do you think about that? And, you know, if they light up like a, you know, glowing Christmas tree and just start getting all excited about it, yeah, it's probably worth putting in, you know.
Yeah.
But if they're like, it could be interesting, you know, you probably want to scrap it unless it's not much work.
Yeah. And
unless it's something easy to put in. And that's the other thing is if it's easy to put in, if it takes like 5 minutes, 10 minutes to do the thing, then there's not really any worry about it. Just put it in, you know.
Yeah. But again, if
it doesn't mess up your game.
Yeah, like I remember speaking with the Bow Brothers developer on that topic, and he talked about how they organize all these suggestions and features into a list of how easy is it, how important is it, and how long is it going to take to do this. And you need to think about that as a game developer. Because you could have something so amazing and groundbreaking that it could very well sell your game, but it could take you 3 more years of game development to implement in the way that it would work. And part of being a game developer, and this could probably be its own topic, is that sometimes you need to know when to let something go. When no matter how much you love it, no matter how much your fans love it, and it's going to be the best damn thing ever, it's just not fitting. It is the square peg in the round hole of your title.
Yeah. And if you run into something that is going to be completely game-changing for your game and, you know, is going to take you 3 years of development, you obviously can't spend 3 years of development developing one feature. But could you get something similar that works plenty fine, but it doesn't have 100% of the functionality. It has like 95% of the functionality, and it still completely is a game changer that you can do in 6 months. If there is, then you might want to look at that. You know, that last 5% is not worth the extra 2.5 years. But to find that, you need to have a good designer on your team.
Yep.
And, you know, a good programmer could also potentially see that. But, you know, programmers are hit and miss on that kind of thing. But, like, it could.
Yep. And when you're trying to avoid kind of wasting the player's time or making the game be too long. Like, again, this one thing about this hub, like, all 3 of them kind of wrap up into each other. I like this. That you need to be very mindful. I think going back to what we were saying earlier about that the game shouldn't just stop. It shouldn't be, you know, we're on the 5 of 5 mechanics, beat the level, game over. Like, it reminds you of the Blues Brothers game that I played where it's just like, level 36, we do it, there's a new thing, I hit the end, I'm like, okay, this game must be getting ready to get started. Game over, you win. Like, wait, what happened? Wait, anyone see, like, did I beat 10 levels without knowing it? Like, it in a sense, when we talk about, like, not padding out a game, we could even square this down into just strictly level design. And good level design is about not wasting the player's time. You have to essentially create, you know, memorable sections, and there has to be an ending. Like, you need to have, you know, the running through the goalposts at the end. There has to be one final trick, one final section that kind of is, you know, the ribbon on the or the bow on your game. And
you want to end on the best note you can. You want to give the players a feeling like, yes, I beat it. Look at this. I've been rewarded because this is the bow or the ribbon on the, you know, on the package kind of thing. Like, this is this is my reward for finishing it. It doesn't have to be anything, extraordinary or anything, but it has to do something to reward the player. And, that could be something very simple kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It could be credits with a few images of the game. It could be like it could be tons of different things. Like cutscene.
I was going to say, like, one of the most memorable examples of this, I know it's one speedrunners are well acquainted with, is the Super Metroid Escape from the Planet in 3 minutes. Like, that is how you kind of end a game, with the entire planet blowing up around you.
Yeah.
And
that last 3 minutes is, like, the most impactful kind of thing.
That is the metaphorical exclamation point on the ending of Metroid right there.
Yep.
And like we said, like, you can even do things like one expression I like to use is, the final test. What is going to be my big, measurement? Ooh, voice is dying already. What is going to be my final measurement of my mastery of this game?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
And it could be a big epic enemy that you beat, and then the final kind of thing is you get to watch it blow up, kind of thing, and glorious resolution kind of thing.
Yeah. One thing you don't want to do is just take a normal enemy and make them like the final boss, because we've seen some games will do that. This enemy that you've just fought 27 times. Here he is one more time, beat him, and you win the game.
But he's got more HP.
Yeah, or maybe he's blue instead of orange.
Yeah,
or orange instead of blue.
Yeah, that's horrible.
I just designed 2 different enemies for your game right there.
Yep, there we go.
And
the blue enemy and the orange enemy.
And one of the things that we see, and this is one of the reasons why I brought up Far Cry, especially AAA games, because the AAA market is really guilty of padding out and stretching their games out way too long. And Upin World Design is definitely one of those cases where you're given like 5-6 different systems or elements of interaction, and then we're just going to repeat them for 20 to 30 hours. So, I hope you like assaulting a base, or everybody's favorite, climbing those giant towers again and again and again until you fill up the lovely map completion.
Yeah. Some of that has, a decent bit of place kind of thing, but, when you fill it with, I remember the original Assassin's Creed, there was no reason to really get all the stuff in there, because they had these little, I think, pieces of paper that you have to chase after, and it would take 5-10 minutes if you were lucky to get one of them, kind of thing. And all you get is 0.01 seconds of a cutscene, and when you collect all 200 of them, they all add together to a I think 3 or 4 second cutscene that just causes questions, not answers.
Yeah. Or it's a reward that's so minuscule that there's no reason for, collect 500 boxes of ammo, and we'll let you gain an extra 3 bullets per magazine in your gun.
Oh, wait, what about the collect, 5 million ammo, and then you got infinite ammo from that point forward?
Yeah.
It's I already have infinite ammo because I collected all that ammo.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, one of the more salient examples of this kind of, when you just pad things out too much, was from Ghost Recon Breakpoint that we played on stream a few weeks ago. That I played the Ghost experience, which removes all semblance of abstracted progression in that game and just leaves the pure story, the pure gameplay. And it is just a grind of missions. And you can see, it's really a fantastic example of kind of removing the fluff or the glitter and just seeing like the bare mechanics of that game and how limited it really is when you are not looking for loot and there's not a progression curve of difficulty, and it is just you repeating the same thing for 20 to 30 hours. Maybe you're on top of a mountain, maybe you're on the bottom of the mountain, maybe you're in a village, maybe you're in a city. It's still the same thing.
Yeah. And there's really not really much to do there because you're just going around shooting enemies.
Yeah.
And that doesn't really change. It's not like, like if they maybe procedurally generated or maybe you had several layouts of where units would actually be at, then there would be some variance in there kind of thing. But when they're always in the same exact set locations, yeah, there's no strategy there. There's no nothing. It's not like because like if you walk around this corner, there's not going to be an enemy there. But if you did have it where, one time there could be an enemy around there, but sometimes it wouldn't, then that would create variance kind of thing and, difference and interesting things that could happen kind of thing. And, you get that kind of thing in multiplayer, but you won't get that kind of thing in single player unless they specifically build it in that way.
Yep. And when you're trying to avoid this kind of padding out, again, like when we look at a lot of the AAA franchises, it really just comes down to how many times can we repeat the same thing before the player wises up. I felt the same way about Marvel's Spider-Man. That the basic system of Spider-Man, the transversal and the combat are really great. But it runs into that situation where it doesn't really grow in meaningful ways from beginning to end. The player's mastery certainly will grow, but there comes a point where it's, I am the best I'm going to be at this game, and then all you can really do is just keep kind of ratcheting up the difficulty to create quote-unquote new content.
Yeah. And mind you, by this, we're not telling you not to pad out your game. We're telling you not to over-pad out your game. I mean, you have to pad out your game or else you're not going to have but like a 5-minute game kind of thing. Like if you take my last game and you just don't pad it out at all, there's pretty much only one map. You go in, play one map, you're done. Game over. Play one map of Mario, game's over. You've already platformed. Kind of thing. Game's over. We're not telling you no padding. We're telling you to not over pad your game. You need to evaluate when is the point where you should stop. When is the point that players are no longer having fun.
Yeah.
And then take that point and then end it before they get to that point.
Yeah.
You want them to still be having fun when they end it. So if they play through and they stop having fun at map 8-6, and then you want to either end it at 8-5 or 8-4.
Yeah. And another thing is, if there's a section that just feels like padding, like it does nothing to help the game, it doesn't introduce anything new or different, then it's going to hurt your game in the long run to force players to do that. When we played Shantae last night, the latest one, at one point it's basically, okay, if my whole screen is the map, they want me go to the right side to talk to somebody, to get a quest, to go to the left side of the map, to then get something at the bottom of the map, to then go back up to the top part of the map, to then get a key to go back to the left side of the map.
I think that's a great transition into the wasting players' time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we'll do 2 topics, then weird games, and then we'll wrap up with the third one. I think that'll be a good way. But
you want to move into the wasting time?
Yeah. And again, all these topics intersect with each other, so we can kind of segue in and out as the need arise. But speaking about moving on from padding out a game, it's also important to talk about not wasting the player's time. And again, while these two topics are similar, there are some very big differences, or there's some notable elements of it. So when we're saying not waste the player's time, we mean that the player should always feel like they're being engaged by the game, whether they are or they aren't, because you can kind of trick the player depending on how you present the elements, or how the thing is set up. But ultimately, the player should never feel like time is being lost while playing your game. And
like time saver mechanics in most AAA games.
What was that?
Like time saver mechanics in AAAs. Just pay us, $100, and you can not waste your time playing this part.
Or the fun pain, pay to wait. What are some other terms? Timers are, of course, another very timer. That hopefully. Test. Can you hear me?
Yep.
It was such a good example. It broke my headset. But pay or wait, timers, anything that makes the player realize or feel the time of playing the game is a big no-no. Like, there's that old, that expression, time flies when you're having fun. That the player shouldn't be counting the seconds of playing your game. You're doing well when somebody says, I started playing your game, and then 2 hours just magically went away.
Yeah. And grinding in a game can be both a good thing and a bad thing, depending on how you do it. If you have too much grinding, they're going to be counting the time, and they're going to be like, ugh, kind of thing. But if there's grinding just at right points kind of thing, it can add so much to the game.
Yeah.
Here's an example that can be both good and bad kind of thing, depending on exactly the game and everything. But like, you play through a level, you go straight through it kind of thing, and you're progressing along the ways, and then you get to the boss, and you get your butt kicked, and then you go back and you grind a little bit, and then you go to the boss and you beat him this time, kind of thing. That can be both a good example and a bad example, in the fact that it can be good in the way that it adds that impact that the boss is strong. You have to go back and grind to get stronger. But if you put too much grind there, then they're going to be like, oh, I wish I could just fight the dang boss, kind of thing.
Yeah, like, this is like right here, like one of the big points about Souls-like games, that there's a very good reason why there is always a shortcut, a bonfire, or some easy way to get back to the boss once you've gotten to them. Because developers know that when you are focusing on a boss fight, you don't want to be distracted by anything else. And you've already proven that you can make it to that boss. You've made it there. So the reward, or a quote-unquote reward, is that there's a shortcut. Instead of spending 20 minutes to get back to a boss fight, maybe you only need to spend 2, 3, maybe even just 20 seconds. Take an elevator right at the bonfire, up, and there's the boss fight. Because they know not to waste the player's time, and they also know not to punish them. Because here's the thing. When you waste somebody's time, it is kind of a punishment to that player.
Yep, and you know how I feel about punishment mechanics in games.
And I also want to add on to what Shark just said about kind of the right and wrong way of grinding. Because idle games in particular really walk that line of, it is a grind, but
the whole game is a grind.
Exactly.
That is the gameplay loop, a grind.
And there's a huge distinction or difference between good and bad idle games. Because like we said, an idle game is just progression without any fluff to it. There's no gameplay. there's sometimes there could be elaborate graphics, sometimes they're not. It's just watch numbers go up while other numbers may go down or go up in the process. And how you engage the player, or how do you let them kind of be affected by this grind, will kind of help them in terms of whether or not they're going to appreciate it or not.
Mm-hmm. And that's there's a whole kind of science behind that, because you've got to make your upgrades in that game feel meaty enough that it's like, I'm glad I upgraded, kind of thing.
Oh yes,
but you can't make them too grindy to get to that. They're like, oh, I wish I could just get this upgrade, kind of thing.
Yeah. It's kind of like I'm trying to think of a really solid example. Like, let's imagine a cookie clicker, or an idle kind of game like that, and you're clicking on the screen, you're hitting spacebar, whatever. In 2 minutes of clicking, you unlock an upgrade that now, instead of to get back to that point, it will only take 10 seconds of clicking as opposed to 2 minutes. That is a major upgrade in that game. It gives you that sense of progression and lets the player know that I did something and now I've been rewarded for it. A bad example would be, I take those 2 minutes and the upgrade I get now means it will now take 1:50 to get back to that point.
Yeah. And, if Ramin were here, he would be saying something about, how upgrades give you a endorphin boost or something along that lines. And they basically do. I'm not all into the science of that stuff like Ramin is, but there's definitely a impact to your psychology when you get an upgrade that is meaningful, kind of thing. And Tomo said it once before, if you could do something, and I mean, it's very hard to do something and get it to work like this, but if you could do something that upgrades by factors of 2 every time, that would be interesting. But when you upgrade by 2 every time, then you're running into other issues, kind of thing. So that will absolutely shoot you down. So being able to be twice as good is good, but when you're getting twice as good every time, then it's like, so what? I got twice as good last time. This isn't really doing much for me. It's wearing it off. So you need variance in there to shift up that. You don't want to get something to this time, to next time, to next time. You don't want to be predictable, because they're going to see right through that and just be like, oh, I know this game. I already played it. I'm done, kind of thing.
Some developers of idle games will actually change which thing that you're doing gets the next upgrade. And what that ends up happening is that different things that you're doing will be the best thing for a specific period of time. So in the game, what was the name of it? Not IO Clicker. Capitalist Management, Capitalist Clicker. There was a game like that.
I love the Capitalist one.
What was that?
I love the Capitalist one.
I think that was it. It was kind of like, at one point, your biggest money maker is, fast food restaurants. And then as you upgrade, at some point, the lemonade stand may be your next major thing you should focus on that. And then a few minutes later, it could be mechanic shops. So they're constantly switching or changing up what you should be focusing on.
Yeah, every so many levels, the amount they upgrade for changes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's another big one. That's another thing that I see a lot of idle games will do. That basically, let's say every level will upgrade it by, let's say, 5%. And then when you hit the 10s, every 10 levels will now upgrade that by 25%. And it becomes, again, and then you get that endorphin release. So it's like, oh my god, I'm at level 9, I just need to get a little bit more, and then we'll get this huge boost in terms of my resources.
but then they make you grind so much to them sometimes, and then that just ruins a lot of that.
Yep. And when you're trying to keep the player invested in this game and not let them waste their time, you have to be very mindful of long-term versus short-term goals. And this is something that we've talked about many times. Everything the player does should reward them with a short-term boost. Or what we mean by that is, it shouldn't be collect 100 things, get a reward. It should be maybe collect 10 things, get smaller rewards, and then when you get to that 100th, then they all combine to that one same big reward.
So here's a question for you, Josh. Would you think if a game gave you both a short goal and a long goal at the same time? Like, do these 10 things and get this small reward, do these 200 things, and then get this massive reward, and then you get to kind of pick and choose between what you want to do.
I think that could work. The important thing is that the player needs to be rewarded either immediately or in the short term for doing something. You can have a different reward, be the super mega I collected 500 flags or 9,000 pigeons in Assassin's Creed or Grand Theft Auto. But there needs to be an incremental goals or incremental rewards as the player is doing this. There has to always be the carrot on the end of the stick.
Yep. And that carrot on the end of the stick can't be too far away.
Yeah.
Also, if it's too close, then you're kind of missing the point there.
Yeah. One of the best examples of this would undoubtedly be the agility orbs from Crackdown. That you pick up an agility orb, and it will immediately give you a small boost to your jump. When you collect enough of them, you'll level up, giving you, all the benefits of an additional level of agility.
Yeah, and we can't forget about the temporary ones, like the temporary boost kind of thing. Like Mario's a good example of this. You get a power up, you get a mushroom, and you are temporarily larger. You've grown to twice the height kind of thing. But that is only good until you get hit again. Again, the fire power up, all these other power ups. They're little rewards along the way that, reward you, but they're only temporary. There's also like the star where you get it and you're invincible for, a few seconds. And then after that, you're gone, and like how many games uses that kind of thing?
Ah, yes. And again, giving the player momentary boost of power is another very effective way to mix things up. This again is another big thing of idle design, and even just like more popular games where they'll throw in the turret section where you're now behind a Gatling gun, you have infinite ammo, or instead of you being using a sword, maybe you're inside a giant robot who's slashing 30 guys at once.
Yeah, I remember one idle game I played where like when you got this power up kind of thing, that your clicks, instead of doing 1 times damage, they do like I think like 20 times damage every click you do. So like you would get on there and just click.
Yeah, I think Clicker Heroes did that really well.
You would get that momentary boost that just really just gets a player engaged kind of thing.
Yep. And again, as long as you can keep the player from feeling like it's becoming a routine, that will help out a lot. And one other thing that I want to mention, and then I think I could move on, but I'll see what you have to say. Is that you want
a big one that we haven't hit.
Okay. One thing that I wanted to bring up that I think you want to be careful of is having the player lose or go backwards. As we said, punishment mechanics are one of the easiest ways to make the player feel like they're wasting time. Hey,
yeah,
you just spent.
What was he getting over it?
Yeah. or in games where, or this is one of the things I hate about Bloodborne, that bullets and your potions do not respawn, or they aren't automatically recovered when you die. So if you fail enough times at a boss, you'll have to go grind minions to get more. I forget the name of it. I think blood shards or blood needles and the bullets. And again, like some people will say, well, if you're good at the game, it's not going to bother you, and that's the point. You don't want to put something in the game that punishes or makes the game harder for lesser skilled players. This was an issue with Demon Souls and the World Tendency system. That
Sekiro.
Yep, Sekiro as well. That when you died in Demon Souls, if you were in human form, which is aka the easier way of playing it, the world becomes darker and enemies become more dangerous. And to a new player, that's not just kicking them when they're down. That's kicking them when they're down, throwing salt in their eyes, and then stabbing them a few times in the back.
What Sekiro's best at.
Mm-hmm. Like, if you're going to make things harder, do it for the players who want that challenge. This is a great example of Nintendo design, and even one of the things we see from a lot of indie developers, where, like, if you remember that game I played, What the Golf, that the basic way through the story is ludicrously easy. It's, easy to the point that anyone who can use a controller can probably beat the game. But when you go for those bonus challenges, then the kid gloves come off. And it does it because they know that the people who are going for that are experts at the game. They want to make it harder.
Exactly. The one big thing that we have not tackled is referring to Metrovanias.
Mm-mm.
And and games like Resident Evil, games that make you backtrack over the maps, and that can be good to a certain point, but there's that certain point where it becomes too much, and it just becomes monotony and wasting the player's time.
Oh yes, again, Shantae being a really good example of that. Go here to go here to go down to go back up. And if you're going to force the player to repeat areas, then you either need to design them to allow for different ways across, aka shortcuts, or you need a fast travel system. You need some way to tell the player, you already did this, you don't need to do it for the 15th time.
Mm-hmm. Or, like different mechanics that will allow you that unlock over time.
Mm-hmm.
Like we saw that in Vision Self Reset, where one time you could you cross this room and it was really painful, but like once you got like I think wall run or something, you could end up running up the wall and get through it in a different way that is variant and quicker.
Yeah, Axiom Verge did that really well as well. That you get these power-ups that allow you to phase through a wall, double jump, infinite jump, whatever kind of jump you can imagine. And then lo and behold, I don't need to do that painfully hard section anymore. I'll just take that shortcut over there, and I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it requires an understanding of your mechanics and knowing how to design the game to accompany them.
Yeah. And if you can't do that, then either your mechanics aren't varied enough, that you haven't done enough mechanics, or you haven't used your mechanics properly, and you either need to add more or do something in such a way that it makes it better, or you need to cut out some of that length, some of that backtracking.
Yeah. And one thing that I also want to mention is the idea of prestige systems. This is where the player will, by choice, restart the game. They'll go back down to level 1, they'll lose all their super cool perks, and they'll restart with some kind of new benefit. And you can make that work, but you need to realize that if a player is doing that much, you gotta make it worth their while. Some games, some idle games, the prestiging occurs very often. Grim Clicker, for instance, is an example of that. While something like Clicker Heroes, they expect you to grind for hours and hours until you then want to prestige, or I think it's restart the universe or something. They use some kind of term for that, and then they give you like some kind of super upgrade point that you can make use of. And
Yeah.
you have to be really careful with prestige systems. One, they can end up breaking your game, especially if it's a multiplayer based title, where the player restarts, but now they do 10% more damage, or they have 20% more health. And then the second thing is if you keep putting the player in that position, it is going to have diminishing returns. In Payday 2, they have this whole idea for a prestige system with their infamy system. And it only benefits you, I think, up to level 15 or 30. And then the rest of it is just, for clout.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's another system that is very similar to the Prestige system called New Game Plus. And New Game Plus done right can be really interesting, and New Game Plus done wrong can be just a horrible grind fest.
Yeah, if it's just your same game, but now every enemy does 10 more points of damage, okay.
Yeah. Let's go to the word of the day, Chromasia here. Mm-hmm. The way we did New Game Plus on that is when you did your New Game Plus, you lost nothing. You lost nothing but the maps that you have unlocked, kind of thing. You only lost your physical progression as up to what maps you could select. Nothing else. Mm-hmm. You didn't lose any of your levels, none of your equipment, none of your characters, none of that. But what you gained is if you were really invested in the story, number one, you can experience another facet of the story, because there is changes that happen through the story, based on your playthrough. And mind you, they're very minor, very not minor, very few and far between, sadly, right now. But sometime working on the remake to vastly change that. But the other thing is what you gained is the level scaling system. And the level scaling system allowed you to increase the level of the enemy characters by 5 levels for every quick, meaning that you could go back to that original level and you could have a completely different challenge, because in the first level they only had the basic attack. You take them up a few levels, they have the second attack. You take them up a few more levels, they have the third, the fourth, the fifth attack. And it becomes just a completely different map at that point, because you have to use completely different strategies, because they have they have more moves, more possibilities to be able to affect that map. Not only that, but they have higher stats and everything, which means they're more of a challenge. But at the same time, we reward people based off of the level of the characters, so you get more gold and more experience from beating a character that is higher level. So you're compensating in rewards too.
Yeah. And you have to, again, give the players some meaningful way or some meaningful reason to keep doing something. This is another issue that open world games tend to mess up on. That we're going to give you 60 towers or 60 bases you have to take out, and the reward for it is maybe you get 5 additional points of armor. By the time, or I know, better yet, you get 2,000 experience points. But by the time you do all that, you'll already hit max level. So what was the point?
Yeah, you got 2,000 points of EXP that you can't even use. You gotta love those kind of systems. The reward is worse than what you got for doing the thing. Or completely useless after you did the thing.
Yep. All right.
It's like, hey, buy 200 packs of cards. Your reward is one of the cards that you've gotten at least 20 times during those packs. Have fun.
Yep. I think with that, let's move on to our weird game segment, and then we'll wrap things up. We're talking about how do you reward the player? How do you keep them invested in the game?
Mm-hmm.
So let's see what is happening this week. So this is a game that is definitely a weird one. Like, you look at these screenshots,
I don't even know what I'm looking at.
and yeah. But apparently, Siliconera and Shuriken really love this game.
I mean, who are those? Are those YouTubers?
Well, Shuriken, I think, is that very premier, like, the fighting game site.
Or they may just like it because it's the fighting game, and there's not
Yeah.
enough fighting games out there.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, 100 skins. Like, again, this sounds like a game that, if you're a fan of early gen 3D fighting games, you're going to enjoy this game. If you're not, well, tough. Don't even bother looking at it.
You, did I just see a short character in there?
Yep. Wait,
Okay, I'm sold.
better yet, it is a drunken shark man.
Okay, I'm buying it.
Alright, there you go. Well, they got one person.
Oh wait, it's fighting you. Probably not.
Let's see. Wait. The thumbnail says Stellar Warfare. The title says Starbase Admiral. I'm kind of confused here.
Maybe it's Starbase Stellar Admiral Warfare.
Okay, when we talk about being able to show your game off, these
Mhm.
features don't tell me anything about this game.
Yeah. And you know, I can tell you a big part of it is because there's basically no UI on a lot of those screens.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to show your UI in your screenshots. I know that it's not as pretty.
There we go. There's the UI right there. Can you make it out?
They probably cut out a lot of the UI kind of thing just to, you know, take prettier screenshots. But people aren't looking for prettier screenshots. They're looking for what your genre of your game is when they're looking through the screenshots. And they are, you know, if there's no UI in there, they're not seeing it pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
They're seeing it's a space game. It could be any kind of space game.
Yep. Oh,
Now, then, where you want to put all the flashy stuff and make things look beautiful is in the trailer. I would say, taking away your UI, disabling your UI for the trailer, probably a good thing. Doing it for your screenshots, not a good idea.
I'm confused about this one. Game features entourage graphics. What does that mean?
Him and his homies made the graphics.
Okay. The presence of firearms and knives. You may not be able to use them, but they're there.
They're present.
Oh, there's some knives.
They've gone to school and be like, present.
Here's a really good screenshot. Can you make out what this is?
Nope. And again, not much UI there.
There's a bookshelf. Here's a completely dark room. I see the characters holding a flashlight, but the flashlight's not turned on.
Maybe the flashlight's broke.
But then here's an indicator for, I'm assuming, battery. So I think it must be on, or it must have juice.
Maybe they're just deciding to stealth through the section without a flashlight.
Joan of Arc, the beginning.
Skins with power-ups are, that's something I don't like in games. I like, skins can be nice, but when I want to run a certain skin, but it has a power up that I don't like, and the power up I do like is on a different skin.
Mm-hmm.
I have a choice between running what I want or running what I need to do, and it's like the one I want looks like he looks really badass and everything, my really badass looking character in that outfit. But in the other one, he's wearing a freaking clown suit, and it makes no damn sense. And it's like, why is this even in the game to begin with?
Yeah, Marvel Spider-Man did that right. They basically said once you unlock the costume, the power becomes separate from it, so you can mix and match whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
I love this feature. An intricate multi-dimensional world with truths. You need to switch in all dimensions. Oh, script with philosophical myths.
Dimensions. That's a sentence or a phrase. You need to switch in all dimensions.
I'm assuming this is an adventure game. Adventure
I don't know.
Size rolling scene, playing grotesque fairy tales. Bizarre and unexpected plots. Not just one plot, you get all the plots.
All the plots. You need all the plots.
Let's see. Rain Invasion. Okay. 2D platformer with puzzle elements. Okay. I am not seeing...
They definitely have a graphical aesthetic to that, but there's definitely, it definitely does not look good. I mean, they're definitely going for the kind of cold, purple look to it. And the character definitely stands out from it, but the character doesn't feel like it fits in that world.
And House is an RPG.
There's a level system, probably. Or some kind of upgrade.
Let's see.
It's also a visual novel.
Yeah.
And a FPS.
Okay.
Now that first screenshot looks like Breath of the Wild.
Yeah. Or Shadow of the Colossus. Wait. Hold on. This to this. It looks like two different games to me.
Yeah, it does. It looks like 2 or 3 different games.
Yeah. Like, some of these screenshots look pretty good.
But they look like they're from completely different games.
Yeah.
And that's something you do not want.
Let's see. Complete freedom of building a character any way. Multiple ways to complete a quest. So somebody decided to make as their first, I'm not sure this is their first game or not, an open world RPG.
And we all know how open worlds turn out for indie developers.
Mm-hmm.
Not good.
Fear of the Dark.
Because the issue is you remember how we were talking about in our the first point about overstretching the game? Yeah. Open worlds, unless you have a ton of content, aka a ton of developers, hundreds if not thousands of developers working on the game, you're not going to have enough content in there to not overstretch the game in an open world game. Even AAAs have problems filling in open world games.
Oh yes.
Like we're talking about with Spider-Man and Ubisoft games and stuff like that. They end up running into the stretch, the overstretching it because of their open worlds. What do you think an indie's going to do with their very, very limited resources?
This looks like an RPG Maker game to me. Do you get that feeling?
I mean, it could be, but I'm not necessarily locked into it, kind of thing. I think they definitely did a very generic UI kind of thing, which is looks very much like very similar to the default RPG Maker, but it's not the same because you can see those little squares in the corner. it honestly, it may be an RPG Maker game, but it also may be that they either suck at making UI or they bought a asset pack of UI and
Mm-hmm.
it just looks so generic in that kind of thing.
Yeah, and again, you want your UI to match your game's aesthetics. Like, this is supposed to be a horror game, very dark. Then, this could be maybe like a wooden post that has, like, scratches in it. Or, it looks like someone's been, like, ripping it apart. Like, if you're just doing generic screens, it really brings your game down.
Yep. And I mean, that ammunition symbol up at the top, that did look like an RPG Maker. So, I mean, like, it could be an RPG Maker game.
Mm-hmm.
That somebody put some effort into.
Wait.
So it's definitely not your stock, ordinary RPG Maker game, if it is one at all.
Wait, so this is a procedurally generated game that apparently revenue is going towards a new prayer space.
What?
What the hell are these graphics?
You just did it. So, Josh. This game is going towards a new prayer space, and you bring hell into it with these graphics.
Let's see. The Dungeon Paradox. What the hell? And then we go to a game that looks so generic. I can't even tell what's really going on here.
Yeah, everything is one color. Everything's just that one shade of brown.
It's a turn-based game. I don't know whether to use phase-based, like they're trying to sound fancy. Ooh, it has beautiful visuals.
Yeah, those beautiful single-colored visuals that look like shit in generic. Those beautiful visuals. Beautiful, shitty visuals.
Dynamic lighting. What the hell? Open-ended storyboard ending? I don't know what this game is. Is it a stealth game?
At least they storyboarded their ending.
Uh-huh. Is it an adventure game? Is it a stealth game? Ooh.
I don't know if they know.
Who knows?
An indie game. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
It's an indie game. It says it on the thing. It's an indie game. Nothing else you need to know. Awesome P2 looks like it could be interesting.
What? Oh, good. Here's another sign when your story page has an entire story about the development of your game.
Yeah, probably not something you want to include.
What the hell? Remember we talked about how, like, when your portraits don't match the art that's going on screen?
Yep. They don't need to be the same, but they need to have cohesive. Not they shouldn't be, clashing against each other. Should have style that fits. Are we playing this on an OCRT TV?
Maybe. Ooh, Craftopia.
And what about the COVID-19 snake cure corona? Because you can just eat, just go find a snake and get bitten by it and now cure corona. As long as it's poisonous. Only poisonous snakes cure corona.
Look at this screenshot I
only
have.
if you don't go get help from the hospital. The heck is that?
PETA better not find this game.
It might be more interesting if PETA does find it.
I wonder where those cows are coming from. That's my question.
The cow farm.
Here's the best of crafting, hack and slash, automation, survival, and a variety of other elements melded together in the best of games with people from all over the world. What?
The best of games?
Is it a king of games?
No.
Could be interesting.
I mean, it is the best of games.
Yeah. It is an action-adventure indie RPG.
No. Well, it's indie. That's all you need to know.
What the hell? Those skeletons. I have a feeling this is going to be a game where the crafting will be reasonably good and the combat's going to be horrible.
You know what I wonder? If my next game gets put on Keymailer, which pretty much any game that gets listed on Steam gets put on Keymailer, because they'll sit there and contact you, because that's what happened to me with our last game. But if I don't select the tag indie, or is everybody going to think I'm AAA?
Maybe.
Your
CD Projekt Red.
200 people.
Curry Kitten FPV Simulator. Okay.
What is FPV?
I don't know.
First person vehicle simulator?
First person view? Ooh, meditation first person quests. With 2 endings. Not 1, not 3, but 2.
At least they got some variety in there.
Like, these screenshots don't look bad. But
they
again,
do look Unity asset. Dildo.
Alright. What are we at? June 4th. Alright, this will be the last page. E-Cheese Zone. What the hell? Wait.
That sounds like a meme game.
What?
So they're not screenshots of the game, it's screenshots of people playing the game. Wait, wasn't that called out photos?
Let's see. What was that?
Wouldn't they call that photos?
Yeah.
Not screenshots?
Okay, then. Let's see.
Yeah, Steam would not let them on the store like that. They need to have actual screenshots. Like, they got on me about putting my title screen on there.
Oh, good. There's a game for Draken, possibly.
Waifu breaker. Gotta break them waifus.
Oh, good. Command Conquer Remaster Edition. Hope I get this. Get all
What's
the
that
Command
one underneath it? Strub?
Yeah, I
said
saw
that
that.
name.
Speeve? Seb? What?
Strub? Or just Bev?
Maybe.
It's a silent.
Oh, fully destructible ground. So it's Minecraft. But
You think anybody's going to be able to search that name?
No. You should put some numbers in there as well. Sbev 25 asterisks.
He should take out the 2 E's and replace them with 3's. We don't want him renaming his name. Just, reorganizing it.
Alright, so for our final point then for today, we're going to talk about how I'm back. Alright, as I was saying, for our final topic, we're going to talk about how do you keep somebody playing your game? How do you keep them invested in it? And there are a variety of things you can do here.
Oh, tons. I mean, the first parts are not overstretching your game and not wasting their time.
But this is where we can certainly talk about reward mechanics and reward systems.
And getting those dopamine hits, as Ramin would say.
Yeah. And again, this is something that you are only limited by your imagination, because every video game can do something differently. Whether it's, a new level, new enemies, weapons, new systems, new cosmetics, new anything. And not only that, but as we said, prestige systems. Making things harder, making things different, variants. There's just an infinite number of ways that you can try and keep the player coming back to your game.
Mm-hmm. And, the... I don't know. I don't even know where to go with this one because, there's just so many things you can do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you have, let's say, a beat 'em up kind of thing, you could make the enemies more challenging for some way. I do. I think I need you to start on this one because my mind's going in getting pulled in 2,000 different directions. I don't know which way to go.
Being able to present the game in a different way is something that we see really from the roguelike genre. And as we said in the first part, it's not always about creating new, as in a brand new system, a brand new enemy, brand new rules. It can be as simply as twisting or changing what's in your game to present a new, or give that appearance of being new. The thumbnail for this piece included Monster Train, and Monster Train was heavily inspired by Slay the Spire. And one of the things that Slay the Spire did to kind of give the game the sense of growth was the use of an ascension mechanic or an ascension system. Every time you beat the game, you unlock a new rule that will make the game more challenging. Beat that, you unlock the next rule, and these rules just get stacked on top of each other. And what the game does is essentially it allows them to not only reward the player, but gate the difficulty. Because it would have been easy for them to just say, okay, hard mode is just Ascension 25. That's it. Instead, what they say is, you think you're good enough to play the game, well, play it. You win, we're going to make things a little bit harder. And it kind of lets the player grow and be rewarded by saying, okay, now challenge yourself with this.
Yeah. And there's so much growth in mechanics there and how things change, and the amount of variance in that game is insane. And mind you that Monster Train, the developer behind Slay the Spire, did have his hand in Monster Train.
Yep.
I'm unsure how much, but I know that he went on podcasts with them several times talking about Monster Train.
Yep. And in this way, you are making the game more challenging, and you're able to reward the player, or it gives the appearance of a reward. Because again, some people may not like making the game harder, but it's a way of presenting your game and giving them more to do. Now, some games can reward the player via mastery. And this is, again, stuff like Formasia, Disgaea, strategy RPGs, any game that is kind of built on a collection of systems. That the game may only say you only need to get to level 60. But through the systems in play, you could get to level 9999. Or with open-ended games like Auction Not Included, Factorio, Minecraft, where in these
so many strategies.
Yeah. In these games, you can play the game differently and be rewarded in different ways. For one person, unlocking colored dyes for your shirts, who the hell cares? For somebody else, it means they can now create, their favorite cosplay outfits for their character.
Yeah, and to Oxygen Not Included, they have different maps, like the cold map, the hot map, the metal rich map, the metal poor map, all kinds of different things, and they have aspects of these where they can just generate them, and you can shuffle your generation before you pick your map. And each one of these things are going to issue like a certain amount of challenge or a certain amount of effect what you can find in the map.
Sorry, Shark, my headset cut out as you were saying challenge.
Oh, okay. So those things can affect the challenge. Either make it easier, make it harder, make it somewhere in between, make it different. And you can pick between those things, by shuffling until you find what you want. And in the end, that's going to change what appears on the map. Which, if you're on a cold map, you're probably going to, have more interest in warming things up. And if you're on a hot map, you're going to be more interested in cooling things down. And if you're on a medium map, you're going to be more interested in more regulating that, and not really focused on that and more focused on other things. And, the way the systems and everything work in Oxygen Not Included is, no matter which way you go, like, you build different stuff to deal with it differently. You find something that works good enough, but can you find something that works better than that?
Mm-hmm.
And there's just like, like Oxygen Not Included is less about mechanics and systems and more like your mechanic of using their mechanics kind of thing. Like, yeah, you can use this little cooling thing to cool off a area, but what you could do is use this cooling thing, pop some vents behind it, super cool this coolant, and then run that coolant around through your base and cool off your entire base area. Or you could run that coolant into some a heavy oxygen-rich area, create liquid oxygen, take that liquid oxygen and pump it into a spaceship and power the spaceship from it.
Yeah.
And it's more about using the mechanics of you using their mechanics rather than just the mechanics doing stuff.
Yeah. But with that said, it's important to clarify that we're talking about a very specific kind of game. Like, that definitely does not work for every title. And again, that's why for this section, there is no perfect solution that works for every genre. Because every genre with every kind of mechanic and systems are going to have different ways of keeping the player engaged. When you're playing a platformer, for instance, you can engage a player with having them find bonus collectibles. You can have hidden levels. You can change the mechanics we talk about with Super Mario World. And those things are motivating enough. And it's important to understand that motivation is different for different mindsets.
Yep, and it needs to be, those mindsets are kind of set by the type of game it is.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a action game where you're going around killing, stuff and whatnot, like almost like a Zelda game or something, or or a Metroidvania kind of thing, or like a tactical RPGs, those all have like very different mindsets playing it.
Yeah, yes.
Like, you don't want to be taking a action game, like you're going around just arcade shooting people kind of thing, and then here's a puzzle, let's think on it for several minutes kind of thing.
Or,
and at the same time, you don't want to take a tactical RPG that's very much about thinking about things, and here let's click this exact timing. You've got to exactly get the timing on this thing right, or you've exactly got to jump from this pixel to this pixel in a platforming thing. No.
Or stop a section with 10 minutes of cheesy dialogue. Hey, you just complete a puzzle, you beat a boss, now stop and listen for 5 minutes of talking that you can just skip right through.
Yeah. And that's another topic right there, is meaningful dialogue.
We should get Sally Beaumont on for that one. The voice actress I spoke with. Now, when you're trying to motivate somebody to play through a game, Again, all the topics for today intersect each other. You don't want the player, as Shark said, you don't want them to feel like they're wasting their time. You don't want the game to feel like it's padded out. And you have to be able to present something that the player is going to enjoy doing on a moment-by-moment basis. You don't want to be, here's a really cool, amazing thing you're going to do for 2 minutes, and then you're not going to do it again for 30 hours.
Yeah.
And typically, games that are really great with their moment-to-moment gameplay can kind of cheat in this regard of not having to add in new content or being able to pad or add grinding. Again, like Marvel's Spider-Man, the movement system in that game is amazing, and the combat also works. The stuff around those two systems gets very grindy and repetitive. But a lot of people aren't going to notice that by the fact that, hey, I'm swinging around like Spider-Man, fighting people like Spider-Man.
Yeah. And you got to love how Josh did that earlier. About, like, let's talk about meaningful dialogue, for a later topic. Sharky's a writer, that's his main thing. Oh, let's get a voice actor in for it. It's like, what?
You can write her lines.
Exactly. Anyway, like there's so many ways to keep players playing, and you have to work out that motivation. What keeps them motivated? And the key behind that, one of the keys anyway, is playtesting. You got to find out what the players are enjoying from your game, and how you can either add more of that because there's not enough of it. Add more of that with variance if there was if they like it, but there was not, you would be overstretching it too if you just keep on going with that. Adding something different to break up the gameplay. I mean, we bringing up Chromasia again, for the third time now. Like when I was playing through the combat system and everything. Like I was playing through it, and like the combat system was getting very monotonous and everything. Like it just felt like you were just doing the same old, and it was like this. We need to do something to break up this combat system. Something to not destroy the combat system, because the combat system is really fun, just to a certain point, and then it just becomes like the same old. And that's where where I introduced the rock paper scissors mini game inside there, that did something very brand new that changed your crit rate. Like I don't know any other game that you have a little mini game that changes your crit rate for one round kind of thing, and the enemy's crit rate for that matter too. And that little bit of variance in there made it from where the combat system got old after you played 3 maps to where you play hundreds of maps and never get bored, kind of thing, of that specifically.
Yep. Being able to present something in a different way, or again, change up what the player is doing, when you're adding in that variance, it keeps the game from becoming repetitive. And like ultimately, I think that is one of our major points for today. That when it feels like the game is just spinning its wheels in the sands, it's not going anywhere, you're playing it and it starts to feel like work, the motivation begins to run out. And when it runs out entirely,
and you're overstretching.
Yeah, and most people are going to quit that game, and they're not going to come back to it.
Because there's no interest.
Yep. You've killed their interest in a game, and that's not what you want to do as a developer.
And when you kill their interest in their game, they're not going to come back to that game. And if you make another game, guess what they're going to be thinking about? They're going to think about how you killed their interest.
Yep. And this is, again, where roguelike design, replayability, variance can come into play. Now, when we're talking about a linear game, like we said, you need to present something for the player to chase after. A new level, a new skill, new story beats. Anything that the player can kind of be looking at the distance going, I want to reach that point.
All of them at the same time.
Yep. And
because just one motivation may not be enough.
mm-hmm.
You may need multiple. Like again, going back to Chromasia, we had story beats on every level. We had moves that you would unlock after your character got to a certain level, which you normally only get to that certain level by going so far into the game. And every time you beat a level, you got a new level. Although 10 of them were variants of levels, but they were the same maps, but new levels kind of thing, and new story, new everything kind of thing. And like the game kept on giving you not necessarily new stuff, but not the same stuff either, because the same map with different enemies and different layouts, that's new to you. That's not. It's not that the enemies are new. It's not that the map is new or anything, but it's just the whole situation as a whole is different and new. The fact that you get new story on there is also new. That's actually new kind of thing. Yeah. And you get these, like reusing assets, reusing maps, reusing all this stuff is very much something that every developer needs in their bag of
tricks.
Yeah, that. But they need something in there. They need this in there, because if you don't reuse stuff, if you don't reuse your content in some way, then your game is not going to be long enough, and it's not going to be. You're just wasting your time, essentially, because I don't mean reuse everything. I don't mean overuse things, because that's overstretching your game. You have to find that safely extreme point where you don't use too little and you don't use too much. Yep. Don't go to don't be extreme. Don't be safely safe. Be safely extreme. Yep. When it comes to reusing your stuff. And find that exact safely extreme point that gives your players the best experience while saving you the most time.
Yep. And as Shark said, that there are different motivations for playing a game. And you have to understand that from your player base. Somebody will be in that, top 5% who wants to 100% the game. They want to get every star, every item in your title. Somebody else may just want to see the end of the story, and then that's it. And you really have to be aware of what people want out of your game. And it is, again, about trying to find all the different ways you can extrapolate that gameplay loop out. And this is why we're seeing more developers focus on playability and approachability with their titles. That they're going to put in something like the cheat mode from Celeste, or puzzle skip, or level skip, because there are people who don't want to get stuck on a puzzle or on a section and just want to see how the game plays out. And that is not going to bother the 100% Uber player who wants to get every single item in their game. But you need to make your game playable for those different groups.
And that's the real advantage of having multiple things happening at once. Because if you're getting new levels, you're getting new story, you're getting new skills and everything. If you have all that going on at once, kind of thing, not necessarily, all like just bam, here's all of it at the same time, but we're working towards all these things at the same time, then no matter who the player is, if they're interested in one of those things, they're interested, in going forward, kind of thing. It's multiple carrots. It's like 15 carrots in the stick that are all pointing in the same direction. As long as they're interested in one of those carrots, like that one that's covered in chocolate, or that one over there that's covered in salt, or that one over there that's boiled until it's soft and tender. If they're interested in any of those carrots, they're going to head in that direction. And when they head in that direction, they're heading towards all of them. and they might get to taste they'll get to taste the other carrots, and maybe they'll like the taste of those too.
Mm-hmm. But you
But
need,
they'll get all the carrots if
yeah,
they keep on going forward.
yeah. But you need to be able to wean players on for that. Because again, some people are going to approach your game from a hardcore aspect, some are going to approach it from a casual, and you don't want to throw new players in the deep end, just as you don't want to put expert players in the kiddie pool right at the start.
Mm-hmm. You got to be safely extreme.
Exactly. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Talked about motivations, reward systems. I guess a little bit more about reward systems. That you can, there's different ways to kind of give the player that feeling of accomplishment. As we said earlier, like the agility orbs in Crackdown, new cosmetics. Again, it all depends on what the player is looking for in the game, and how does the game reward them for doing it.
Well, EA is the expert at giving you a sense of pride of accomplishments.
Mm-hmm. And paying for it too.
Yeah, you just got to pay for those loot boxes, and you get a sense of pride and accomplishment from
them. Mm-hmm. And when you're trying to get somebody to play through a game, again, it's very tricky in terms of how much do you reward the player. Because we've seen some games where you give them the right skills, and they'll break the entire game. Some titles are set up to kind of allow you to do that. Some of them will just entirely fall if you try and do that kind of design.
Yeah, and if you give the players, if you over-reward a player, if you reward them all the time with something small kind of thing, they're going to start not thinking that's a reward, thinking that's default. Mm-hmm. If every time, every 5 minutes I came, over there and gave Josh a cookie kind of thing, there'd be a point where, if I didn't show up within 5 minutes, he would be disappointed because he didn't get a cookie. But bringing the cookie, he wouldn't be grateful of it. He would just expect it. Yeah. It becomes the normal expected thing. And, if you stop doing it, the players are going to get, mad at you. But if you keep doing it, they're not going to be happy. They're just going to be like, this is normal.
Yeah. And this is something that we see in a lot of platformers and games that introduce new rules and mechanics. That you beat a boss, you get a cool power. Then you beat another boss, you get another cool power. And then 2 bosses in, you get nothing else. That a Wonderkin game that I played kind of did that. That it introduces the idea that you beat a level, you get a new mechanic that gets used. But then it starts to get to the point where you're going like worlds at a time, you're not getting anything new. And again, this is where motivation comes in. That you could end the level or end the world with a cutscene or a little section, something, again, to hit the nail on the head that the player has accomplished something. And
exactly. You need to give the players a reward for things they accomplish. Yeah. Otherwise, they're not going to be. They're going to lose interest in accomplishing things. It's that dopamine, as yeah. Ramin would say. If you're, there's other ways to reward people. I mean, like, there's ways to reward people based on masochism by making things extremely, extremely hard,
yeah,
and basically impossible to win. And then when they finally beat it, when Josh finally beats it, he gets that dopamine rush of he finally did it. And that's the masochism reward, which is very much a off turn to pretty much everybody who's not a masochist. But it is a reward of its own, beating that really hard character.
Yeah, and this is a typical failing that we see from a lot of indie and first time developers, where there is nothing kind of connecting these levels or the gameplay together. It's just, here's 700 levels, go play them. That's it.
Yeah.
Maybe when you beat level 700, you'll get a screen that says, congratulations, and that's all you get.
And in some of those, you get to level 700, you beat it, and it doesn't even say anything.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
that's definitely like a a I don't even know what the good analogy for that would be, but it just does not feel good at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you beat the game, and then it's like just takes you back to the menu. Um, uh, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I get.
Oh yes. And again, you need to be able to give the player a reason to keep playing beyond just playing the game itself. That's a very important point. Again,
Mm-hmm.
when we see developers say, "Oh, my game has 800 levels or 30,000 lines of dialogue to read," or anything like that, that's not motivation. You can't promote your game on length anymore. You have to.
Unless your game is about motivational speaking,
There.
then the more words you have, the more motivating they get.
Mm-hmm. There has to be an intrinsic reason to play this game. Now, sometimes you can do extrinsic, with PvP multiplayer based content. But again, that gets back to the heart of this point that every game is different in terms of its motivation.
Mm-hmm. And you have to, know your game, and then figure out what would be best for it. And that is a hard choice because, like, there's no rules for that. Basically,
Yep.
it's you know your game. You get feedback and find out what the players like, what they don't like, and then you as a designer take all that and try to figure out a way to make the best out of it.
Yep. And again, it takes a lot of time. It takes a really good eye towards game development. And obviously, it takes playtesters. You need to hear from people as to what aspects of your game do they like. It's that
Mm-hmm.
old idea of, if somebody likes something, do more of it. If they don't like it, do less of it.
Yeah, but or make it better.
Mm-hmm.
But doing more of a thing they like might cause them to not like that anymore because you do it to the point where it gets old.
The old thing, you eat so much cake you can't stand it anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, this is a very tough topic because we could spend the next 2 hours just going through our favorite games and describing completely different implementations of it.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing exact we could even hit on. Like, even between games of the same genre, there's just like nothing that we could really just say, "Oh, this is the answer for this genre. This is the answer for this genre," kind of thing. Like, we know that what you don't want to do for a genre, you don't want to take a genre that's based around thinking or strategy and put something Twitch based reactions in there
Mm-hmm.
or precision based, kind of thing. And you don't want to take anything precision based or action based, and put something that's like, brain racking kind of thing in there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And
But that's kind of about it, for the hard rules.
mm-hmm. I'm trying to think if there's anything final, any like major example. Like this is one of the things I struggle with the latest Anno game, Anno 1800, that I don't feel the motivation to play it. I love the systems of it, I love the aesthetics, the music, but there's nothing that's keeping me invested in playing this game because they removed kind of the overarching reward system in favor of just kind of AI driven matches. So I beat the game, I have no real reason to play it again.
Mm.
Whereas with something like
Endorphins rush.
yeah, whereas with Monster Train, I'm seeing how far I can go with the Ascension system. I'm seeing about the new unlocks. The same thing with Hades. That I've replayed Hades plenty of times and gained completely different experiences. But again, that's because those games are set up for variance, which
Mm-hmm.
doesn't work with every game, as we've said.
Yeah, if you have a roguelike, you definitely want
Oh,
variance.
yes.
That's a hard rule. That's one other hard rule.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean that the variance is necessarily a reward system, though. It could be, but it also could not be, depending on how you do it.
Yep. But I think with that, let's wrap things up because we certainly had a lot to talk about today.
That mega topic.
Mm-hmm. So, for those of you watching this live or recorded, thank you so much for tuning in. As I made the announcement earlier this week, I am currently working on 2 new books on game design. Game Design Deep Dive Roguelikes and Game Design Deep Dive, my mouth is dying, Horror. And anyone who donates, pledges, or gives Super Chat $15 or more from now till the end of August will earn an acknowledgement in my book. You will find our Discord and Patreon link down below, and you can find me on Twitter at GWBicer.
And you can find me mainly on Discord, and you can find my link, my non-pretty link down in the description. You can also find me on Twitter at Nexus Games INC1, also link in description. And you can find me on the YouTube channel, which link is in the description. Again, not a pretty URL.
Mm-hmm.
We need pretty URLs for our YouTube channel and our Discord.
Mm-hmm. But I will be back later tonight for our regular game stream and nightly around 9 p.m. EDT. Our live shows are Sunday around 4 p.m. EDT right here. And ideally we'll have our Indie Dev Survival Guide videos hopefully going up at some point, as we are both very much swamped with work right now.
Yeah.
While the world burns, we work.
Yeah, we burn more.
Mm-hmm. But everybody, thanks again for tuning in. Come back for daily discussions on game design here and on Game Wisdom, where some of the art and science of games. Until our next talk, take care.
See ya.